I called them the gray people. They would come into my room and talk to me. They would sit on my bed. I realize now they were ghosts. Empaths are like sponges. So we absorb the emotional, energetic, psychic, physical from other people. And then we hold on to it. If we're a sponge, we've got to wring out the sponge and release all that stuff. And it's the difference between feeling like you've been cursed to understanding that your sensitivity is really truly a superpower.
If I'm feeling anxious or irritated or any negative emotion, it might not necessarily be mine. It could be something I picked up in a large crowd.
100%. As we become more sensitive, we have to become boundary setting ninjas.
Today, I'm joined by Lisa Campion. Lisa has been immersed in psychic development and energy healing since childhood, drawn to spirituality and the metaphysical world. As a Reiki Master Teacher and psychic counselor with over 30 years of experience, she helps psychics, empaths, and healers embrace their gifts. Through her books, classes, and Miracle of Healing podcast, Lisa empowers others to see intuition as a strength and live soul-aligned lives. Her mission is to create an army of healers, guiding individuals toward personal empowerment and spiritual growth. Enjoy this interview with Lisa Campion. When did you realize that you were first psychic, and what was it like to embrace and develop that part of yourself?
It's kind of an interesting story. So thanks for asking that question. I always like to talk about that. But it's one of those like I see dead people kids. So I was really born with the psychic gift. My very, very first memories ever are pretty psychic in nature. So I remember my first memory ever. I remember I was lying in my crib and there are all these incredible beings standing around me, like filled with light, and there was all this energy, and they were like blowing kisses at me. It was like really magical. And then the door opened, and my mom walked into the room, and they all disappeared. So that's my very, very first memory. So I was born in the 60s, just outside Boston. And back then it wasn't like really okay to be psychic. So I grew up in a very haunted house, like a big old Victorian house you see in New England. And I was just my whole life I've been able to see things, know things. I was an empath, even though there wasn't a word for that until kind of recently. And so it was a difficult childhood in a lot of ways. I think I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what was going on. I was told I had a really active imagination. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm not making this stuff up. Like, I'm pretty sure that's like, but I'm like, yeah, mine. Because if everybody tells you you have it's imaginary, then you start really doubting yourself. So on one hand, I was trying to figure out what was going on. And the other hand, I was trying to just to pretend to be normal in public, because I just had this knowing that if I talked too much about what I saw wasn't going to go well, for me. And back then, if you saw angels and talked to Dead Uncle Fred, they'd put you in a mental hospital. So, um, so it was an interesting start. And I think I spent the first 20 years of my life trying to figure it out and turn it off and understand what was happening.
Wow. Okay, you
Yeah.
were standing in your crib when you first saw spirits, I guess you would.
Yeah.
So how old were you?
Well, I was a baby,
How do
you
you
know,
remember?
I just knew as my first memory.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember like being a little older and um that at night I called them the gray people. They would come into my room and talk to me. They would sit on my bed. I realized now they were ghosts. And they'd be sad and they wanted to talk. And if I listened, they felt better, you know.
What would
Um,
you say?
and they just wanted to share. And it's funny talking, it's because the way that I would perceive it would be a combination of knowing, feeling, hearing, seeing, sensing, like sort of all. So I'd sort of hear their story, and if I could sort of listen to their story and kind of get it, like understand it and sympathize a little bit and be like, yeah, that's really hard, man. Like, sorry you're going through that. Then they sometimes would leave, you know? I still say that clearing ghosts is like doing therapy. Just like a bit like that, right? Um, and most of the time they were lonely. Sometimes they didn't know they were dead. That's true. They didn't know they were dead, or they'd be forgotten about. They were worried they'd be forgotten about. They just were lost spirits. So I've always been able to communicate with the spirits of the dead. It was a strange way to grow up. It was a strange way to be.
That's fascinating. And okay, so then you started telling people about this and they kind of shut it down.
Really? I mean, fortunately for me, that does happen to some people, but my parents were hippies and they were kind of, they're like, isn't that nice? And they didn't know they didn't shut it down, but they didn't really know what to do either, you know? So I, I just was quiet about it because I knew it was an awkward conversation, made people uncomfortable. So I was quiet about it. But certain things happened, to me, like my hippie parents took me to transcendental meditation when I was 10. And I was fortunate enough to meet Maharishi Yogi, who I had no idea who he was until I went to college and studied comparative religion. But so I learned to meditate when I was 10, and he was one of the first people that really talked to me like he understood what I was going through. He was like, "Oh, honey," was speaking through a translator. He's like, "I'm so sorry you're going through this. Like, this is really tough." He's like, "If you grew up in my country, we would know what to do with you, and if you grown up in India." He said, "But in America, they have no idea what to do with people with spiritual gifts. So you're just gonna have to suck it up. But you need to hang in there because you're gonna help a lot of people when you get older." I was 10. It was 1974, and I was like, "Oh my!" I was like, "Oh my God, somebody said, an adult." Of course, he was Maharishi Yogi. Like, I had no idea who he was until way later. That was kind of amazing. So I did have these like moments of grace in my childhood, even though it was hard. Yeah.
And I think part of why this is so interesting to me is that I did have a similar moment when I was little, where I was going to bed, I was in my bed and I heard something, but unlike you, it freaked me out. And I think I somehow, because that's my only memory of that when I was little, but I felt like it was a spirit, it was someone there with me, and I basically wanted it to go away. And so what I'm asking is, did I shut down my own psychic abilities, and do other people do that as well? Because I know we all have them. So
Mm.
how do we kind of embrace them? And if we have done that before, how do we let them open back up?
So many people have that experience. It's super, super, super common. Um, I hear about it all the time, and I work a lot with people that have had bad experiences, that have had almost like post traumatic stress from the things that they saw in their childhood. And I'm not sure why I was never afraid. I wouldn't say I was never afraid, because sometimes I was, but I just knew it was part of my life, so I accepted it. And I think many, many, many people have had your experiences where they saw something that scared them, they saw or they felt uncomfortable, and they didn't have any context to understand, what was happening. Or I think it's often really common that it freaks out people's parents. So little kids who are talking to dead Uncle Fred, little kids who are seeing angels or fairies, or afraid of the monster in their closet, which half the time is actually there. I think the grown-ups around us when we're kids just tell us to cut it out. It makes them really uncomfortable, or it's against their religion, or they drag you to the church and throw holy water on you, or whatever, happens. It's super, super, super common that, or, like what happened to you, you freaked yourself out, right? So you shut it down. And then what happens is you go through time, you go through a spiritual awakening in your adulthood, you take some Reiki, you learn yoga, you study yoga, you learn how to meditate, and boom, it pops right open again. And then I think that's where training comes in. So first of all, I think we need to sort of say yes to it, and to stop saying no. And then we probably need some support. That's why I write the books that I write and teach the courses that I do, because I think we need a guide, we need help. And psychic ability is like any kind of ability, it's like a muscle. So you need to exercise that muscle and then it opens up again. Does that make sense?
Definitely. You listed Reiki, yoga, meditation. Are there other practical tools that the listeners could do to help develop their psychic abilities?
Yeah, those are, I feel like the opening. So those are the things people do that usually sort of create a spiritual or psychic opening for people. I think one of the best things you can do to start is start a journal. I call it the psychic journal. In fact, I published one called the Psychic Awakening Journal. But if you just get a regular old journal and you start writing down every dream you have, every time you pull cards, every time you have an awareness, every time you see signs and omens, every time you get a really strong feeling when you meet somebody for the first time, all of your hits, nudges, synchronicities, signs, omens, dreams, if you start writing it down, you're going to be amazed by how psychic you already are, first of all. And those things tend to have a kind of an ephemeral quality to them. So if we don't write them down, they pass out of our awareness they're like dreams. They pass out of our awareness pretty quickly. So I think that's a really good practice. I think having some divination tools, like some oracle cards, angel cards, tarot cards, runes, like whatever kind of divination tools you like, is a good practice. And then we absolutely need to make time to listen. So maybe that's meditation. Maybe it's just quiet walking. Like when you walk your dog, don't put on a podcast. When you drive in your car, be quiet. Don't turn on the radio. Like let your mind relax. When we do those things, our mind shifts into the alpha brainwave, and then we become very receptive, very intuitive. And if you ask a question and then like wash the dishes quietly, or fold the laundry quietly, or walk the dog quietly, or sit on the beach and stare at the water with no noise, right? Then be gently aware of like what comes into your awareness. And it might be a feeling, a knowing, a sensing, a hearing. You might see something in your mind's eye, right? Because everyone's psychic senses are different. So I think we're so busy in our world and it's so noisy all the time. So we have to make space for quiet listening.
Mhm. And when you say ask questions, you mean just kind of like in your head, maybe to your higher self or your spirit guides or
Yeah,
angels?
all of that. Better yet, write it in your psychic journal. Write your question in your psychic journal. And if you don't know what to ask, I mean, a lot of times we have a specific question like, what should I do about blah, 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 but if you don't know, like, what do I need to know right now is a really good question if you're not sure what to ask, right? And then go lie down and stare at the clouds. Go lie down outside and stare at the clouds going by. And just calm your mind. Formal meditation is great, but sometimes even it's hard to start there, to start with a serious meditation practice. But 20 minutes a day of staring out the window, ask the question, stare out the window. um, it's gonna work. Sometimes people get the best psychic hits in the shower, you
Mhm.
know, because we're in that alpha state. When we're relaxed, we're not really thinking about anything. We're sort of in that daydreamy place. That's where we're the most intuitive.
Yeah, and it might be the only time of the day where someone isn't listening to something.
Yeah.
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 You mentioned being an empath earlier, and you also work with empaths. What advice do you have to those who feel overwhelmed by the energy and the emotions of others?
I think the very first thing we need to do is learn how to manage our energy. We need to learn really, really good energy hygiene, how to ground, how to clear other people's energy from us, how to protect and shield ourselves. Those things make up energy hygiene. And it is a life changing experience for people. When we learn how to do that, I think we go from feeling tortured by our, sensitivity, like, you know, uh, where you're so sensitive, maybe you can't get off the couch, or there's only a few things you can do in the world, like you're not going to go get on an airplane or go to a store or do all those things that can really overwhelm our senses. So when we learn energy hygiene, all of a sudden we have freedom to be in the world, to figure out how we're meant to serve. Because I do believe that empaths are here to help. We're here to help other people, or animals, plants. There's some way we're engaged in healing. I think we're all healers, really. Um, and it's torture until we learn how to manage our energy.
How
Yeah.
can we ground and clear?
I there's so many different ways and different things work for different people. I wrote a whole book about it called Energy Healing for Empaths. So that book is full of different ways we can do that. I think standing outside with your bare feet on the ground is an excellent way to ground. I think just taking a deep breath. So if you take a deep breath and you focus your attention on the bottoms of your feet and your tailbone, we ground, we become a little bit more in our body. Empaths tend to leave their bodies really quickly when we get overwhelmed. We blow, like our nervous systems blow out, we blow our circuits and we leave our body. So in the feet, in the tailbone, take a breath. Just be like, okay, I'm back in myself. And then take another breath to release the energy that you picked up from other people. Like I imagine sort of like flushing it down a drain or standing under a waterfall of light to wash away all of the energy that I picked up from other people. I was traveling yesterday and I was on an airplane for like a couple of hours, really all day. And airplanes are the most difficult thing for me because as a sensitive, because you're so packed in, you can't move. Like the person next to you is like pretty much sitting on your lap, you know? And I'm like, oh, I just have to really tank up and just be like constantly through the day, breathing, clearing. And then to protect yourself, imagining a big, like you're inside a big bubble of light. That's your boundary and that it's actually the edge of your energy field and that nobody can get in that boundary without permission. One of the things that I like to do, and I did this on the airplane yesterday, was just get up, excuse yourself, go to the restroom, wash your hands. And when you wash your hands, like with this water, I'm letting go of all the energy that I picked up. Breathe, feel your feet, put the bubble, reset your bubble, and you're okay.
The first thing that I have to say that comes to mind is the water on airplanes. There's been studies about it, and I guess it's like very contaminated. Um,
Yeah,
but I don't
I
know
know.
I mean, but then there's we wash our physical bodies, but we never really clear our energetic bodies, we don't like we're talking about. People don't stop and clear their energy body at the end of the day, like we take a shower. So
Yeah. It
definitely.
needs to be done. And if you're a sensitive, it may be multiple times throughout the day that you need to do that. Like maybe you do it when you first wake up. Maybe you do it before you go into one of those big box stores, before you go into Costco or Walmart, before
Mhm.
you go to work, before, you interact with people, maybe halfway through the day, you need to do that. So whenever you start feeling funky or tired, exhausted, cranky, um, there's a good chance that you've just reached empathic overload. So your being is full of other people's energy. Empaths are like sponges. So we absorb the emotional, energetic, psychic, physical, all of that from other people. And then we hold on to it until we learn how to clear it. And so if we're a sponge, we've got to wring out the sponge and release all that stuff. And it's the difference between like feeling like you've been cursed to understanding that your sensitivity is really truly a superpower.
I wanted to ask you about that. So if I'm feeling anxious or irritated or any negative emotion, it might not necessarily be mine. It could be something I picked up in a large crowd.
100%. Or the people around you that you're close to, you know? Um, and so it's either the people we're in proximity with or the people we're emotionally close to. We tend to pick up their stuff. And I think the first thing to do is ask, is this mine? Is this even mine? You know, if you were fine before you had lunch with your friend and your friend spent the hour complaining and, dumping and, sharing and you're like, oh, I'm exhausted and tired and cranky. I just want to cry or have a nap or both. Then chances are good it's not yours. And you can ask, is this mine? And that would be like when I'm in that situation before I might go to the restroom and do it. I might wait till I'm in my car and just breathe, release, release what's not mine. And I imagine that waterfall of standing under that waterfall of light. So our intention works really well. Our breath works really well. Grounding, connecting with the energy of the earth, lying on the ground, putting your bare feet on the ground, all of that can be very effective.
Now, let's say you leave that lunch with your friend and you ask the question if it's yours or not. Will you respond differently, or will you want to clear yourself the same, whether it's your energy or someone else's?
I think it works for both. If it's mine, then I know I need to attend to myself in a different way, right? I'm going to um carefully attend to my own emotional needs and wants. So empaths are very sensitive. We're quite emotional people. We have our own emotional life. So I think all empaths also need to learn ways to handle our own emotions. 15, I would say you need 15 minutes of feeling time every day. Maybe that's journaling. Maybe that's breathing or meditating. Maybe that's tapping. I love tapping, EFT, emotional freedom, where you tap on all the points. I do that to honor and express our own emotions in a healthy way, right? So maybe that's like, oh, I felt really sad for my friend. I felt a lot of compassion. I feel something she said triggered me, and I'm having my own, reminded me of something. I'm having my own emotion. So we want to find a way to express in a healthy way that emotion, to move it out of our body in a way where we're not hurting other people or hurting ourselves, right? So, getting in a traffic road rage incident on the way home is not an appropriate way to deal with our own feelings. We need to learn healthy ways to do that. And it's journaling, meditating, tapping, therapy, give yourself some Reiki, all of the things that we can do to manage our own emotional life in a healthy way.
So we need to focus on feeling our feelings.
Yes, feeling our feelings, expressing our feelings where we're not projecting them on other people, blaming them on other people, taking them out on other people, you know? So we're really owning and being responsible for our emotional nature. And when we stuff them in the body, that's not good, right? That causes health problems and pain and, disease inside our own body. But it's also not okay to project them all over everybody else. Like, I'm cranky, so I'm going to throw a fit and expect you to deal with it. Like, that's not okay either, you know? So every human needs to find a way, but particularly every empath needs to find a way to manage their feelings. That's to express them, feel them, express them, move them out of the body in a healthy, productive way. Right.
So by moving them out of the body like that, that doesn't mean they are gone forever and we eventually will not have any more feelings. They're going to keep coming, right? I mean, by getting to the root of a feeling doesn't mean we're completely finished with that feeling forever.
No, I mean, no human is. I mean, you might be finished feeling that in the moment. Like, I always think of emotions as like waves on the beach, right? The wave comes, it actually moves through your energy field in an upward way, usually from the feet up your body like a wave. And if you breathe or cry or notice, like, oh, I'm feeling really angry, I'm feeling really sad, I'm feeling really joyful, and you allow it to move through you, it's gone. It's like, whoop, it's gone until the next one comes. The next wave on the beach comes. It's when and that's natural. That's gives life meaning, life joy, life richness, where you want to be able to like look at a sunset and feel joy. I was just at my son's wedding and I'm crying, everyone's crying happy tears of joy, right? So we want to feel emotion. We want to feel even the hard emotions, even like anger or grief. There's no bad emotions. We've just been trained to express them badly. We don't when we inflict them on other people in ways that aren't so cool. But of course, we want to have really rich emotional lives. When you don't have that, you have depression, right? You have like you feel flat and numb. That's not good either. So Everybody needs to learn how to process their feelings in a productive way.
How do the emotions tie in with our intuition?
So, such a great question. I love that. Um, there's really two kinds of emotions, and people get this very confused. We have like what I call reactive emotions, and reactive emotions are sort of like they're almost like chemical in nature. Like if you feel anxiety, or let's say you almost get in a car accident, right? You slam on the brakes. Your body is flooded with like adrenaline and cortisol and all these sort of, hormones that come in to kind of put you in fight or flight to save your life. You slam on the brake, you saved your life. Yay. But those are like reactive emotions. They're different from soul level emotions. Soul level emotions are sort of deeper. The soul level ones are the ones where we have intuition. So if you're feeling anxiety, it's really never intuition. Sometimes our reactive emotions come from the past. They come from traumas that we haven't resolved. They come from like our wounded self. That might be like jealousy, envy, rage, murderous rage when you slam on your brakes and you want to kill the person in front of you. That's not intuition. That's a reactive feeling. And they're important and necessary in their own way, right? But we don't want to base our life on those things. Soul feelings happen when we're more in that clear state and they're sort of deeper. So, like love, even grief. Even grief is a really powerful soul emotion. We just need to learn to tell the difference between which one we're feeling. And for me, reactive feelings always feel bad. And soul feelings always feel good, even when they're hard, like grief.
Wow. Okay. So even if I'm feeling grief, that's an intuitive type feeling that's coming from the soul.
Can be. I mean, it can be informative. Grief is just the flip side of love. It's a natural thing to feel when we lose somebody that we love or things change in the world. So grief can be extremely informative. Like let's say you're dating somebody and you're not sure if it's the right relationship for you, right? And then they go on a trip and you're like, "Oh, I really miss them. I'm really sad they're not here. I'm really like I wish they were here." That's telling you, that's your intuition telling you something important, and your higher self telling you something important.
See, how would you be able to differentiate between that and just an attachment that's forming?
Yeah. So we can have reactive feelings because I think like our inner child can have like, a tantrum when somebody leaves, or we would feel anxiety as a uncomfortable feeling. When you feel like you're missing somebody, even though it's like a little bittersweet, there's something juicy about it. There's something like soulful about it. Just go back to the reactive feelings feel bad. They feel bad. You feel yucky.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm connecting the dots because I think with a soulful feeling too, you're going to feel it in your body somewhere. I mean, there's sometimes I'll feel something in a chakra, even though I'm not well versed on chakras, but I can kind of pinpoint, oh, I feel this in my sacral chakra. And like I'm trying to figure out what it is, but I know where it is.
Yeah. That's great. That's great awareness, great energy awareness. Yes, and we will feel all our emotions in different chakras, and our chakras are very psychic. So our chakras are always pulling in the information around us and reading the room in a way, in really different ways. So each chakra is connected to a psychic sense, to one of the clairs too. So that's a good thing to know as well.
I didn't realize that.
Mhm.
What role does self-care play in maintaining strong intuitive and healing abilities?
I think it's vital. And to me, self care goes in the same category as, energy management. So, energy management is a kind of self care, you know? And I think self care is really different for everybody. So, it's good to have like a list of what really works for you. We need to take care of the body, of course. So, we need, good exercise and 3 healthy meals a day and adequate sleep. If you're not getting that, there's no way you're going to get psychic information. You're kind of in survival mode, right? We need to care for our emotions, self-care for our emotions. We already we talked about that. And when we are taking, if you're spending 15 minutes of feeling time every day, and maybe you've been to therapy and you're really getting clear on your emotional life, it becomes very easy to tell the difference between soul feelings and reactive feelings, right? If you have, it sort of takes a kind of self-awareness, right? So when we're doing spiritual self-care, like meditation, quiet time, that really, really open time in nature. Maybe you need that. I'm also a big fan of play and creativity as part of our self-care routine, you know? So that is extremely good to refill our energy tanks. So most of us, I think, are working on kind of energetic burnout. You know, we're tired, we're not filling ourselves. We work, 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 work all the time. And when we do play and creative things, that's the best thing to do to restore our energy tanks. So I think it's different for everybody what works, but understanding that there's different levels of your being that need self-care. It's not always about bubble baths and eating salads. You know, it's more like, okay, those things are great, but like what's the whole picture? And you know, I mean, I could spend like 8 hours a day doing self-care, but that doesn't leave me time for other things. So I'm kind of choosing like what needs to be balanced today. Maybe today it's a nap. Maybe tomorrow it's a walk. Maybe the next day it's meditation, right? So we want to have like a self-care menu that we're choosing from that keeps us kind of in our more towards our higher self, you know. Um, the more we are caring for ourselves, I think the more access we have to our higher self.
Is there not a connection between how we care for our bodies and then that kind of ripples into our intuitive and psychic abilities as far as, maybe what we eat or if we exercise, if we're doing things to get toxins out of the body, wouldn't that strengthen? I mean, I honestly have no idea, but to me, I feel like it would make sense if we care for our bodies in that way, that it would strengthen the other part of our bodies.
Yeah, 100%. That's true. So our bodies is one of the best psychic senses we have. So your body is so psychic. Your body always knows what's real. It always knows what's going on. It's dialed into whether you're safe or not. You know, it's so true. And if you're not taking care of your body or you're not in your body, if you're dissociated and you're not taking care of your body, you're going to miss all of that. Right. And just kind of, you're kind of out to lunch. And I learned that by when I was young, becoming a martial artist. I spent a lot of my teens and 20s studying martial arts. And it was an incredibly grounding practice for our psychic. You know, like I started working as a psychic when I was 19, but I was also a martial artist. And I think it really balanced my, get back in the body, get back in the body, get back in the body. And then once you're in the body, of course, your body's like, hey, more sleep, more water, we better eat right, and that is, I think and especially because that corresponds with your first chakra, the root chakra. If you're not doing that, you don't have access to hardly anything else, like your body's just trying to um get its needs met. And if you're trying really hard, and I think you're right about having a lot of toxins and having a poor diet is going to disconnect us from our higher self, disconnect us from source, disconnect us from our chakra system, from the truth. And I think people do that because they're in pain and they're sort of trying to numb everything. And when we're in that vein, you're the least psychic ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa, what have we not talked about today yet that you feel is important to share?
I think that one thing that's really important is a little bit of psychic self-defense, understanding that, especially as we open, like when I teach psychic development courses, I always teach a little psychic self-defense. And that is like understanding or leveling up your ability to set boundaries, because as we become more sensitive, we have to become boundary setting ninjas. We have to be really good at boundaries. And most people, especially sensitive, struggle with that a lot, you know? So as you're working on opening your psychic, don't forget your boundaries.
I have two closing questions for you. Before I ask them, where can the listeners go to read more about you, get your books, work with you?
So my website, lisacampion.com, is the best place to go. I have a lot of free courses there. I have a great YouTube channel. You can find me on all the regular social outlets. And my books you can get in any bookstores on Amazon. Hopefully you'll check out your local bookstore. But yeah, I love to work with people, and I really specialize in people that are undergoing psychic openings and need help.
Wonderful. That will be in the description. And my first question is, what is your number one health tip? So that could be diet and nutrition, mindset, physical, emotional, spiritual, the one piece of advice that you would like everyone to know.
I think it's going to be about meditation. I feel like everything comes down to finding a way to connect with yourself and not um turning away from ourselves. It's when we turn away from ourselves that we get into bad health, you know, routines. So learning how to sit with yourself, learning how to be with yourself in a loving way is seems to me the most important thing.
That might be my favorite answer yet. For your last question, you get to choose a number 1 through 100 and it will correlate to a more personal question.
Okay. I choose the number 8.
How do you hope the world remembers you?
Oh, I think that's why I write books. Because I feel like they're kind of like a legacy of the words that I have, the experiences that I've had, that will continue to help people after I'm gone. So I guess the short answer is I'm going to keep writing books. So I hope people keep reading them after I'm gone, and that they continue to help people.
That's lovely. I love your mission. I love everything you're doing, Lisa. You're creating an army of healers, which I love that.
Yeah.
I thank you for coming on and for talking with me today and sharing everything that you did. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Jessica. Thank you for the beautiful work you're doing in the world, and this amazing podcast that you do and all the other things that you do too. Thank you.